Hi everyone, Mrs. Below here. In this video, I'm going to be going over your cell division notes, slides 18 to 26, which is just an introduction to the cell cycle, kind of an overview of the cell cycle, and then also tying in cancer with that as well. So first thing, again, this unit, it's called cell division, which just means to make more cells. Basically, you're just going from 1 to 2 cells. That's cell division. And again, the reason for that is cells divide to 1, maintain that high surface area to volume ratio. So cells want to stay small in size, so they'll divide in order to stay small. To replace damaged or worn out cells, like if you get an injury like a cut or something like that, for growth, and then also for reproduction. So if you're going to go from 1 to 2 cells, you're going to have to copy your DNA, which remember that was replication. DNA replication, which we talked about last semester. And if you're going to go from 1 to 2 cells and you want to end with 2 cells that are the same, the cell is going to have to grow. It's going to have to double in size. And then when the cell goes to split in half, you have to split everything equally and make sure that both cells are identical to what you started with. This is just a picture under a microscope showing cell division. The colors are basically just protein markers, and you can see the different phases. We're going to talk about that: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. And you can see here, interphase, we started with 1 cell, and then by the end we're ending with, it looks like 2 cells. Okay, and we're going to get into this more so later. For now, it's kind of just introductory stuff to this. Before I go any further, I just want to say we are going to be focusing on eukaryotes or eukaryotic cells, but I briefly want to mention prokaryotes or prokaryotic cells. This process that you're seeing here is for eukaryotic cells. It's more complex because eukaryotic cells have a lot of organelles in them, versus in prokaryotic cells, like a bacteria cell, they're a lot more simple cells. So this process is actually a lot easier. And the specific name for the process of cell division that prokaryotes go through is called binary fission. That's just the name that we call the process of cell division in prokaryotes, like bacteria. And in this process, you're going to end with 2 cells that are identical to the parent. And this is what we call asexual reproduction. The cell that you start with is identical to the 2 cells that you end with. This is how bacteria cells make copies of themselves. So I just found this short video to show the process of binary fission. So this is Lactobacillus, which is a type of bacteria cell. And this is it going through cell division, or what we call binary fission. Each cell will divide into 2 identical cells. And that's how bacteria multiply and make more of themselves. And that process, it's a lot simpler because prokaryotes are very simple cells. They don't have as many organelles as our cells do, which are eukaryotic cells. Also, fun fact, they have circular DNA, unlike our DNA that's just that kind of double helix like structure that's in strands. Theirs is like this, but in a circle. So let's get to eukaryotic cells, which is our focus, because this is what our cells, human cells, this is our type of cells. So in eukaryotes, the process is a lot more complicated because we have all these organelles. Now, what we're focusing on for this unit is basically what I mentioned up here, which is asexual reproduction. And that means asexual reproduction is starting with one cell and ending with two cells that are identical to each other. So that's what bacteria cells do when they multiply and make more of themselves. And then our cells do this in our body cells or our somatic cells. And remember, those cells are diploid, meaning that they have 46 chromosomes. And this makes sense. If you're making more cells in your body, you'd want them to be the same. So if you get a cut and you want to make more skin cells, you want those skin cells to all be the same. And this process is called mitosis, and that's going to be the focus of this unit. We'll get more in depth with mitosis later this week, but that's what our focus is. And you're going to end with cells that are genetically, so their genes, those 46 chromosomes, are identical. You go through DNA replication, you make an exact copy of your DNA, and you divide that up equally into two different cells. Later, next unit, we're going to get into sexual reproduction, which is called meiosis. Some people say meiosis, some people say meiosis. I usually say meiosis so you could hear the difference between mitosis and meiosis because they sound very similar, versus if I said mitosis and meiosis, those sound really close to each other. So most people say meiosis. And we're going to talk about this in the next unit, but this is that reproduction part of why cells divide. This specific process is to make egg and sperm cells. And egg and sperm cells, they're going to be genetically unique. So you're going to end with 4 cells actually, instead of just 2 identical cells. You're going to end with 4 cells that are all different from each other. So over here is mitosis. These 2 cells are exactly the same and you have 2 of them. Over here, this is meiosis, and you end with 4 cells that are different from each other, and they are also haploid, meaning they all have only 23 chromosomes in them, versus the 2 over here have 46 each. So, because when you're making egg and sperm, the process is a little bit different because those are going to be used for reproduction. And as far as both of these processes are concerned, they're similar, and then there's some differences. So we're going to talk about a lot of the things that are similar. So mitosis and meiosis, those are both part of the cell cycle. The cell cycle is kind of this big picture, all of the steps that the cell has to go through in order to divide, and mitosis is just part of that. So the cell cycle for mitosis, and then there's the cell cycle that involves meiosis, will result in one diploid cell, so 46 chromosomes, for humans, dividing into 2 identical diploid cells, which also have 46 chromosomes. The cell cycle for meiosis is a little different because you're going to end with 4 cells that are haploid that are all genetically unique. Now, the cell cycle in general, we can break down into 3 phases, and then we can further break those down into sub-phases. So the first big one, where the cell spends a lot of its time, is interphase. And this is going to be broken down into 3 sub-phases. And that's basically when the cell is preparing to divide and it's carrying out all of its normal cell activities. So you can't really tell that the cell's actually actively dividing because it just looks like a normal cell. But it could be doing other things. There is the mitotic phase, or M phase. That's the mitosis part. If this was meiosis, then we would talk about meiosis here, but it's not. We're focusing on mitosis for this unit. Mitosis technically is the division of the DNA or the nucleus, and that's broken down into 4 subphases, which you can remember as PMAT. And then the last is cytokinesis, which cytokinesis is the division of the cytoplasm, and it usually is happening at the same time as the last phase. There's some overlap in its timing with telophase, which is part of mitosis. So let's look at this visually, okay? All right, so here we have interphase, and you can see that's like literally most of the time the cell is in interphase. And that is broken down into 3 subphases, G1, S, and G2. And then we have mitosis, which is broken down into PMAT, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And that's the division, that's the nucleus / DNA dividing. While cytokinesis is going to be the cytoplasm dividing. And this will usually overlap with telophase. And that's an overview of the cell cycle. You have interphase, which is broken down into 3 subphases, G1, S, G2. You have mitosis, which is broken down into PMAT, that's how I abbreviate it, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. And then you have cytokinesis. Mitosis is the division of the cytoplasm. Mitosis is the division of the nucleus and DNA, while cytokinesis is the division of the cytoplasm. But usually in terms of timing, cytokinesis will cross over with telophase, which is part of mitosis.